Hi, everyone. Good evening and welcome into the Wave Now studio as we're starting tonight's edition of Wave Extra on Monday, September 15th. And in real time, we're going to switch up the background for you all. There we go. Reflecting what's going on here in the Wave Now studio. By the way, appreciate you joining us, whether that's through the Wave Now Smart TV app or on our multiple social media channels going on here. Allergies seem to be getting the best of a lot of us, myself included, as I feel some of that pressure there. So make sure I'll get some eye drops and some corrective things just to feel a little bit better as we go on through the evening. For those of you who haven't joined us before, I'm Jose Sosaya, part of the Wave News team, breaking down the big stories of the day, unpacking them in this format. If you're connecting with us through all the different devices, just another way to make sure we go over the big stories of the day coming out of the weekend, heading into the start of this week. One of them, bit of breaking news that we got a little bit earlier this afternoon. It was about a shooting in Old Louisville. I want to bring you some of that video, if I can bring it up right here. Okay, here we go. So yeah, LAPD telling us they found two men who were shot after they got to the 800 building on South 4th Street. This happened just after 2:30. Officers found a victim inside of the building. Someone else was hurt outside. Both men were taken to the hospital to be treated. They're expected to survive. LAPD has not made any arrests in the case that we know of so far, but anyone with information is asked to call the department's anonymous tip line or the online portal if that's something they believe they can help with. In the context of what just happened this afternoon, something else that police are now having to work on after a lot of investigations of violence over the weekend, between Saturday and Sunday, 5 separate cases and incidents in less than a 15-hour span. On Saturday alone, we received confirmations there were around 5 people who were hurt. At last check, though, they're all supposed to survive and recover. 3 people, though, unfortunately were killed on Sunday. A woman found dead at a home on Autumn Way. Her throat was actually cut, was the detail that police gave us in that awful investigation. Police also found a man on East Muhammad Ali Boulevard who was shot in his car and unfortunately died. In more updates from this day to start off the work week on the 15th, a Louisville man accused of attacking his 5-year-old son, pushing him down the stairs and killing him. Well, this is his appearance before a judge today. LaRon Gardner arrested, charged with murder September 3rd. His arrest report initially says that he told first responders his child, who you've heard his name of by now and are reporting of the tributes that his family, friends, teammates have created for him, little Eli Rain. But initially in the arrest report, paramedics taking down Gardner's claim that the boy fell down the stairs, but paramedics and doctors say that the injuries little Eli sustained do not match up with the story that Gardner first told paramedics. At his court hearing today, it lasted less than 3 minutes. The judge kept his bond at $1 million full cash. A public defender was also appointed to represent Gardner. He is supposed to be back in court on October 17th. I'm bringing us back in here to the Wave Now studio. And actually, what I was going to do was have some documents. But in essence, it doesn't matter just because we're able to break down some of the stuff. We just got into the newsroom actually a little bit later on in the evening because we actually got copies of some court filings that were just now shared with us, released by the Nelson County Clerk's Office. If you're familiar with kind of the start of Wave Extra at night, at sunset, and sort of the investigation and actually as things were playing out for the upcoming trials of the 3 men who ultimately were all convicted for their respective roles in Crystal Rogers' death. Of course, the big case of the summer, the big verdicts and decisions coming from the jury, all three men guilty. The names familiar for those who were convicted were Steve Lawson's son, Joseph Lawson, and Brooks Houck, who at the time the crime happened, prosecutors say, was in a relationship with Crystal Rogers. But in essence, want to share with you some information we just got today, or able to read today, I should say, from special prosecutors. And it's their filing telling the circuit court they don't believe that lawyers for either Brooks Houck or Joseph Lawson, who have yet to still receive their full sentences, their punishments, that they don't have grounds for a new trial based on the verdict that the jury rendered. So we'll begin in just in some short notes, some of the counter arguments that special prosecutors Shane Young, who you see a picture of briefly there, and Teresa Young as well, they write out several counter arguments. One being that the court properly denied Houck's motion for a directed verdict. That's something that they had asked for very early on. But prosecutors saying what the court decided was to have the jury render the verdict was appropriate. That the fact that this was in Nelson County as opposed to another venue was also appropriate. The case prosecutors made. And the case that when we were there covering the joint trial of Joseph Lawson and Brooks Houck, prosecutors saying because in kind of summation on our end, because we're not the legal experts, but to paraphrase that, because both were tied in the conspiracy the prosecutors were trying to present to the jury, that it made sense to have them both there for the same trial physically together to go over the same evidence. And there's actually a subset of that for Joseph Lawson's case, that certain witness statements from prosecutors that invited these witnesses to come up and offer the testimony, there was a clear direction of the jury that the only way they could apply this testimony was for evidence against Joseph Lawson, not for Brooks Houck. So that's a specific critique against Houck's defense attorney and saying, we told the jury, what you're listening here, only apply it to whatever the case we are building against Mr. Lawson. The Commonwealth further writing out in their response to the motion that the closing argument reference to the testimony that one of the detectives used, a detective Tim O'Daniel, that them bringing that up in closing argument they felt was appropriate. There was a key piece of testimony that the jury actually, if you remember following this trial, the decision, the recommendation for sentencing, if you remember a name of a witness named Charlie Girdley, who prosecutors had built a case around, him also being part of the initial sort of scheme, or understanding the initial scheme, as prosecutors put it, that his testimony, A, was appropriate, B, it was among the few questions the jury had as they were coming up with their final verdicts for the counts for Brooks Houck and Joseph Lawson. That was among the few questions they had specifically for the court and for the judge and the prosecutors to go over Charlie Girdley's testimony again. And wrapping up with, at least respective to Brooks Houck, that again, the jury's instructions to deal with the evidence that was pretty much just pertaining to him, that was all appropriate and on the up and up as the trial was going on. A few were sort of specific counter arguments in Joseph Lawson's attorneys and their response to wanting to ask for a new trial and that appeal in that way. Again, some similarities in arguing that joining both Joseph Lawson and Brooks Houck for the same trial was appropriate. There wasn't any impropriety or an error in the picking the jurors that they ultimately did. This was trying to find a pool of people that would not have necessarily had as much bias having this case where it was in down in Bowling Green, as opposed to in a pool where they might be more familiar with some of the details of this case. Because again, you had the circuit court judge come in and preside this case with a jury from a different county. There was a point that Joseph Lawson's attorneys were trying to make about not having included Steve Lawson, his father's prior statements, in his own separate trial. But the prosecutors, again, trying to make the case that was on the defense. You should have requested to introduce that evidence to see where that separates their client or not. Also, that their argument that there was enough evidence they showed the jury that showed Joseph Lawson did move Crystal Rogers' car, which was a key part of the case they built against these two defendants and their respective actions that ultimately led to the jury agreeing that they were guilty in there. And again, referencing specifically how Detective O'Daniel's testimony was not something that was out of pocket or inadmissible. It was based on evidence that was used by experts over some history and some precedent that courts and judges had agreed upon. So needless to say, all this, as I think on our radar for the calendar, we're still waiting for, I believe it's this week, the 17th that I last checked, was when our Wave News crew team is going to head down to the courthouse to hear that official sentence, whatever that would be, if it lines up with the jury's recommendation of the max sentence for Brooks Houck being life in prison, and not nearly as much for Joseph Lawson, but if I remember correctly, around 20 years or so was the recommendation for him in this particular case. So obviously something we'll keep abreast of as we're waiting for that official update to come in. And we'll be there, of course, to get the breaking news there for you when that happens. Now to a case from today that our Wave News reporter David Mattingly spent some time digging into. A victim's mother saying that she was shot 8 times. They're a grieving family waiting for more answers, any answers that they can get right now. The victim, 32-year-old Rachel Hughes, found on Sunday near the boat ramp in Shawnee Park. And David spent some time going back to the scene where investigators had been working much of the day to see what it is that they do know and to hear the family just mourning losing their loved one.
She was an attractive young woman with a big, generous heart. And the parents of Rachel Hughes can't begin to understand why someone would have wanted her dead.
I do know they shot her 8 times. That's hard.
The last time Tammy Bryant saw her daughter, she had borrowed her car and was headed down Bardstown Road to this laundromat, where Bryant says Rachel would stop to play games of chance almost nightly.
I think somebody robbed her, took the car because, they ended up dumping my car on 46th Street.
That was just a block north of Shawnee Park, less than a minute's drive from where Rachel's body was found at the Shawnee boat ramp.
I'm telling you what, if they'd have told her she was going to do this, she would have fought them. And that's probably what she did. She fought them because, her shoes, her purse, everything was still in the car.
Rachel's family shows us the jewelry she was wearing that had been recovered. And they struggle with loss and memories of a young woman who they say had her problems, but also held so much promise.
She would have done anything for anybody. Rachel has been through her struggles up and down, but she had just got off of probation. She was getting her life together.
So obviously still a case that as police and investigators, detectives try to work through it, but the pain is still obviously very raw, fresh, real for the family there. As this case develops, of course, we'll make sure to let you all know about the latest information, not just here in Wave Extra, mind you, as we're streaming, of course, on air, online on wave3.com through the myriad of ways that we share this information about what's going on in our community with you. It is 8:17 this evening. We're going to take a quick break to reset and bring you some more stories as you stick with us here on Wave Extra. All right, everyone, welcome back in to Wave Extra tonight on this Monday, September 15th. Right now, we're checking on and just following whatever is going to come of this latest Jeffersonville City Council meeting, a special meeting and a workshop to talk about next year's proposed budget. So big things to discuss. Our partners of the News and Tribune have been reporting and are reporting this. The council wants to get to specific questions to City Controller Heather Metcalf about budget contents. Some saying they're hoping to see contracts for police and fire to be fully funded. The council does not have the ability to raise the budget amount presented to them by the administration, though, but they can also lower the proposed amount. I believe, as just checking in on something that's of interest, Mayor Moore had put out his official statement going through the line items of things that they were able to fund, that total dollar amount, which for sure at least over $65 million. Let's see if I can double check that while I'm looking through the numbers. But needless to say, something we'll certainly break down for you tonight on Wave News at 11. But a big topic of conversation as far as what will happen, and given in the context of recent conversations with our Southern Indiana local municipalities and governments, given the impact to the tax base on the Senate Bill 1. But certainly something, if I'm remembering correctly, what Mayor Moore put out was his official statement on the budget proposal. We'll make sure to break that down for you tonight on Wave News at 11. More news and stories we're following up on throughout today and to the evening and the night. Man convicted of robbing a dying man in a traffic stop back in 2010. Well, he's indicted on charges of assault and robbery. He's accused of shooting a man and then robbing him as well. This happened at the beginning of January, whenever that, when the shooting happened then, but the victim was partially paralyzed and severely hurt. So this was 34-year-old Kentrell Chappelle, another person. Both of these, police say, shot a man inside his car on East Southland Boulevard. The victim was shot in the face, the torso, left partially paralyzed. Officers say Chappelle or Chappell robbed the victim, took everything from his pockets, including a cell phone, keys, and cash. On top of the assault and robbery charges, Chappell's also facing a charge of being a convicted felon, having a handgun. We've since learned he's put in a not guilty plea. The judge set a $100,000 bond for him at full cash. Setting up more stories for you here. Story update on some potential changes for a pretty big attraction in downtown Louisville ahead of its 15th anniversary. There's a plan to improve the KFC Yum Center. The Louisville Arena Authority says it has a plan to make the Yum Center a premier destination for sports, entertainment, and community events, is how they put it. Some parts they want to focus on are making the guest experience better, changing the way they use certain spaces inside the arena, finding new events and programs to host. They say they want to work with a group called Forward Associates to get the project and the process going. And they've also been touring parts of the city to get a sense of what could work, what's missing, and what they need to improve to make it more so, as they put it, that community space.
Anytime you enter one of these and you bring someone in to help you, you've done a lot of other arenas. What you don't want, or I think what we don't want, is somebody, trying to replicate, their cookie cutter model relative to arenas. And the fact that Forward is saying they want this to be very much a Louisville, Kentucky, Southern Indiana, have that feel and be a somewhat of a showplace for our region has been very exciting.
And while the process is still ongoing, Yum Center staff say they do want to hear from folks if that's something you feel strongly about and want to let them know how to sort of focus in that vision. There's a study that just started today asking fan input, community input, event partner input, the feedback they say is going to help them through the vision phase through the end of this year to take that into consideration. All right, bringing us back in here inside the Wave Now studio, looking at the clock as well, 8:24. By the way, time for, on a Monday, for those of you who are resetting and recalibrating after the fun of Bourbon and Beyond, which ended just last night. Definitely a fun music packed weekend, enjoying the great weather outside. But you still have to make room now on those same grounds for another weekend of rocking music coming to the Expo Center Fairgrounds, because Louder Than Life is going to start this Thursday. And see if I can pull up some of the video here. This is thinking I'd had, there we go. This is what I was missing, was this graphic. Okay, bringing that up. There we go. All right. So here we've got this setup here. Crews, of course, resetting the stage for this jam-packed weekend of performances, a 4-day festival with more than 150 or 175 bands across 7 stages on those Expo Center Fairgrounds. And hey, the turnaround is quick. Bands and you know, those tours and the roadies, those crews understand the speed you got to do this with. 3 days after dozens of other bands took over for Bourbon and Beyond. Take a look at some of the headliners here, including Slayer, Avenged Sevenfold, Deftones, Bring Me the Horizon, a bunch, Rob Zombie and Sleep Token, a bunch of other recognizable names for this part of the rock, heavy rock genre as well. Details and tickets, you can find those on the Louder Than Life website if there are still any available. And if you're interested, the festival again starting Thursday, running through Sunday. We'll make sure, as we did this past week, to have those cameras focus firmly on the angle we can get of the fairgrounds for the visuals and the light show that will no doubt be happening out there for the fans and those who wanted to go see their favorite bands each of those respective days for sure. Okay, pausing this little bit here to set up this next story for you as well. So in the context of, we just wrapped up Bourbon and Beyond, Louder Than Life is now coming back up. And this year's stages were set up differently from when they were before, when they were facing I-65 and just the traffic and whatever, you know, homes and neighborhoods would be faced around there. And while there is an updated layout on the Expo Center Fairgrounds for festival fans to have to navigate, and they will see this, if they didn't already at Bourbon and Beyond, they will see it when they come to Louder Than Life. That's bringing some new challenges, though, for people who live immediately around the Expo Center radius, which you consider the homes closest to that particular pit of property. In past years, stages faced towards east of Preston Highway, so Audubon Park, Prestonia. They would get the brunt of the loud noise. This year with the new layout, it seems most of the noise is coming to people in the Beachmont neighborhood. So Wave News reporter Fernando Garcia Francischini went to visit the Beachmont neighborhood, talked to people who say this past weekend, they could not ignore the loud noise that was going on. And it was not just for one night. It was their case, they believed, for the whole weekend, evidently.
Beth Burnett moved to her dream home in the Beachmont neighborhood about a month ago. She says Sunday night was more like a nightmare.
Last night was pretty bad. My 10-year-old, whose room is on this side of the house, couldn't sleep.
That was because of the loud noise coming from the fairgrounds, where the final night of Bourbon and Beyond was taking place. Festival organizers moved around some of the stages this year to create a more enjoyable experience for fans. But with that, they redirected the noise towards Beachmont.
I just wanted to make sure that we were out ahead of it and that everybody knew that the technology exists and that their sound engineers would be working, and they were actually driving around in the community on Friday night to check the noise levels.
Councilwoman Betsy Rui says she's met with event organizers about this issue. She says there is technology that can lessen the amount of noise that gets into the community, and that includes noise-canceling towers. But she says there's a lot of elements organizers can't control.
And it's also affected by, is there cloud cover? Which way is the wind blowing? Is it humid or is the air dry?
Rui says she's anticipating more noise complaints for Louder Than Life, which will have the same setup as Bourbon and Beyond. But at least this weekend, Beth won't be worried about any loud rock music.
We're going to be out of town next weekend. We've got a cabin in the mountains, so they can be as loud as they want to next weekend. We won't be here.
Yeah, thanks to Fernando for that report submitted in today. Now, organizers for both of these festivals, Louder Than Life and Bourbon and Beyond, have set up a complaint line if you are having issues with loud noise or poor cell phone service. If that was something as a resource you wanted to have available that is part of our story and our reporting on wave3.com. Just good to have that information available if you needed it. All right, taking a look outside, a bit of a hazier look from this particular camera we've got observing the downtown skyline, but seeming quiet, enjoying the quiet so far. I'm talking 84 degrees for temperatures. If you're hoping for a cool down, by the way, the storm tracking team is keeping tabs of how soon that is going to get here. Just not quite yet, but it is coming. Chief Meteorologist Kevin Harnett is fortunately going to break that down for us, the timeline, later on tonight on Wave News at 11. You can also get his and the team's breakdown, of course, on the free Wave Weather Now app as well. It is 8:29. We're going to take a quick break to reset for more stories. Appreciate you sticking around for tonight's Wave Extra. We will be right back. Welcome back into tonight's edition of Wave Extra here in the Wave Now studio. Jose Sosaya unpacking the day's big stories, one of them being a lawsuit involving Papa John's founder. It's now moving closer to a jury trial. In the latest filing we could read, an appeals court made a decision in the case of John Schnatter versus 247 Group. Now, Papa John Schnatter claims that 247 Group, which was doing business as the company called Laundry Service, breached its contract by allegedly leaking a recording of a 2018 conference call where it was the report that seemed to break the controversy wide open of John Schnatter using a racial slur, which ultimately forced him to leave the company he founded. Today's ruling meaning that a jury trial can now actually likely move forward. More stories today. JCPS transforming more than a dozen high school football fields to turf. We were there actually Friday taking a look at some of the video we got when Wagner High School started using its new field. It's all part of JCPS's Future Start state plan, investing millions of dollars at 16 of these high school facilities to put in the new turf fields. Concern, though, is going to be for more injuries on turf fields by some who argue that's just what the surface brings those risks. We did talk to two Wagner football players about safety concerns, if they had any to think about.
That's why I like the field, but it's like I'm scared at the same time because, like, I don't want to get injured. That's like my biggest fear, to get injured. And I want to go to the next level.
As of right now, we know there's construction happening at Atherton, Butler, Eastern, Fairdale, Southern, and Valley High Schools to make this switch over to the new surface. Okay, let's see if I can set up. Okay, I'll bring you back into the studio here really quick. Wanted to share, of course, the update on the biggest story coming out of last week, being the murder of conservative activist Charlie Kirk out in that Utah campus, and just where the investigation stands, the tributes, the words now coming from the White House and people in that circle of wanting to honor their friend, and what is happening from here on out with the FBI and the accused killer. From those updates, reporter Karen Kafa has the latest from her information that we can share.
Vice President J.D. Vance hosting Monday's podcast episode of The Charlie Kirk Show from Washington, paying tribute to his close friend.
The thing is, every single person in this building, we owe something to Charlie.
Several members of Congress and the Trump administration attended a Washington memorial Sunday for the 31-year-old conservative activist who was shot and killed during a college campus event in Utah last week.
He believed in family and freedom, faith and virtue and patriotism.
And now planning is underway for a larger memorial at State Farm Stadium in Glendale, Arizona this upcoming Sunday. President Trump and other high-level administration officials are expected to attend, putting security under scrutiny during tense times.
What we're witnessing is the concept of an assassination culture, again, aligning to this normalization of violence.
Amid bipartisan lawmaker concerns about violence, Senate Republicans will be briefed on security by the U.S. Capitol Police and others on Tuesday. Meanwhile, in a highly unusual move, FBI Director Kash Patel revealed new details about the suspect in Kirk's killing in an interview with Fox News Monday.
The suspect wrote a note saying, "I have the opportunity to take out Charlie Kirk and I'm going to take it." That note was written before the shooting.
FBI officials and Justice Department prosecutors typically avoid sharing investigative details before prosecution, fearing it could jeopardize a case. The suspect, 22-year-old Tyler Robinson, is slated to appear in state court in Utah on Tuesday. In Washington, I'm Karen Kafa.
Okay, so what I want to share with you is something I'd encourage you to watch the full piece from our Wave News troubleshooters, Mark Stevens, and that's going to be, of course, up right now on wave3.com. I say that just to give you the background of something that was an investigation that Mark wanted to look into from last week into the weekend. Politicians going door to door, it's a pretty standard responsibility, duty, task, you might say, going around to try and earn people's votes to win them. But the Wave News troubleshooters actually got a tip that a Louisville council member showed up at a voter's door unannounced with someone who's not connected to the city at all, not a city employee. So Wave News troubleshooter Mark Stevens, of course, looked into it, saying that this encounter ultimately raised all kinds of new questions, and he wanted to get to the bottom of this. And so here's some video. Dolores Ezell and her daughter say they've been trying to get the city to do something about a squatter who is living next door to them. These are just some security videos they'd recorded of the man kicking over items along her fence, mowing into a decorative fence in her front yard, expressing his own anger at his neighbor. So we've had to turn the audio down, actually, but you could actually hear him swearing during several of those recordings. So Ezell called her council member, who is Donna Purvis, over a year ago. Internal records show her assistant contacting various city departments to find a solution. But Ezell's daughter, Erica, did not think her mother was getting the proper response, so she criticized Purvis on Facebook.
I was never here to try to intimidate her or, I just wanted, like I said, my whole objective was to bring attention to the situation of squatters, paying attention to what your constituents are saying that's affecting them in their neighborhoods, being their safety, their well-being.
So from there in August, we learned both council member Purvis and a man Dolores Ezell did not know showed up at her door. But instead of talking about the issues with the squatter, Dolores told the troubleshooters they wanted to know how to get a hold of her daughter to talk about her Facebook posts. And in the full story, we'll show you how the man who appeared at Dolores's door does not have any official city job and apparently also has a criminal record involved. So I would then encourage you, bring you up to here on the website, wave3.com. And see if we could scroll down just to point you in the right direction. Because I believe that would be part of, actually, if you know our troubleshooters tab, very easy to find there at the top. And you'll see Mark's full in depth, and it worth noting as well that Mark was able to catch up with Councilmember Purvis for a conversation that, for the most part, was kept intact on camera. Mark asking the council member questions, her ability to respond and state her case and make her statements clear there. So something definitely worth checking out right now under the Troubleshooters tab right there on wave3.com. It is 8:39 this evening. We're going to reset to go over the last round of stories we want to share with you from here in the Wave Now studio. So stick around. We'll be right back with one last check-in on these big stories on Wave Extra. Hi there, everyone. 841 here in the Wave Now studio. Jose Sosadia. Glad you could join us, whether that's through the Wave Now smart TV app or on our different social media streams. Appreciate you sticking around with us as we kind of round down some of the big stories we've been following to start our Monday, kind of winding down on our Monday, looking ahead to tomorrow. What else is going on by the way, our team for Wave News at 11. Chief Meteorologist Kevin Harnett, again, going to be here to break these things down. Our reporter, Logan Perrone, in fact, is going to be breaking down what he was able to listen and hear from this meeting right here around downtown, where neighbors got to meet, listen, ask questions to finalists for what'll be the new independent monitor sort of grouping and agency tasked with making sure that LMPD does go over at least the points it set up. It wanted to improve and to change that culture per the community decree involved with Metro, the mayor's office. And so that'll be something and some key points that Logan, of course, will step in and break down. It won't be just a singular person tasked with this kind of job, the ecosystem and who's talking to whom, who reports to whom, and how that all will work once this job is filled by the finalists involved. And these are people that obviously you are back home. We'll get to see them interact and do the work that they do, but there's no decision because they're still finalists. We'll have to wait to see who ultimately is given that job in this independent monitor capacity. So needless to say, more stories as we round out this evening. Actors Theater of Louisville stepped into its newest era. After unanimous vote, they chose Amelia Acosta Powell as their new artistic director, Emily Tarquin taking over as managing director. Both say they're excited to lead the company through what they call an exciting season, including a world premiere of a show called FDR's Happy Hour. Earlier this morning, we actually stopped by to talk to them about what these new jobs mean and stepping into these new roles.
Emily and I both are transplants to the Louisville area who were drawn in by the legacy and the reputation that this city and this institution have for being national and international leaders of bringing new artistic work into our field and telling new stories.
And I think we're both dedicated to the mission of Actors Theater, which is to unlock human potential, build community, and enrich quality of life through theater that explores the wonder and complexity of our time, and do that as stewards of this legacy organization in a community we love.
That new show, FDR's Happy Hour, premiering next month, and you can learn much more about the calendar and the season of shows at the Actors Theater on their website. In an update, Racing Louisville's Savannah DeMello, at last check we learned, was in the hospital because she collapsed on the field during this latest match with Seattle. You're seeing a lot of the reaction there. In the 45th minute, right before halftime, she had a medical emergency, sat on the field before collapsing. You could see her teammates, coaching staff, distraught. So were some competitors. Now, this afternoon, we were told DeMello's awake, in good spirits, undergoing testing to figure out what happened when she had the medical emergency on the field last night. DeMello was also removed from a game back by medical staff in March. And also worth noting, the team had said that she is living with Graves' disease. As far as an update on her condition, we'll make sure to let you all know how she's improving, whatever doctors are saying, so she can leave and go get continued care or go home. As far as the game is concerned, against Seattle Reign FC, that's going to resume at 8 o'clock tomorrow night, Tuesday, behind closed doors. That they're going to stay in Seattle at Lumen Field to finish that match. Of course, we have statements here from Racing's general manager, Caitlin Flores-Milby, coach Bev Yanez. All things we'll certainly be hearing from them as the week plays out to bring Savannah DeMello home and hopefully to figure out what's going on and how the team and Savannah can move from beyond that.
Simple bull rush. Everyone's
In another story, lots of people, at least sports fans, talking about Cincinnati Bengals quarterback Joe Burrow. He was hurt in Sunday's game against Jacksonville. This was the second quarter of the game. He's now going to have surgery after this turf toe injury. Turf toe, if you weren't familiar with the specifics of it, it happens in a person's big toe joint when ligaments, tendons, soft tissues in the joint stretch or possibly even tear. It usually does get better with rest, ice, over-the-counter pain relievers, but in Burrow's case, a severe injury may require surgery, which we've learned that it does. So we decided to talk to a Norton orthopedic surgeon about how to possibly prevent this from happening, just discussing what all is involved.
Sometimes the toes, they don't get a lot of credit. You know, the people are like, oh, it's just a toe injury, you'll be fine. And so for decades, there were athletes that had career enders and were otherwise not the same because they never got great treatment for something that can be so debilitating when you can't push off with that big toe again without this ligament complex.
That was Dr. Andrew Harstead, a Norton Orthopedic Institute surgeon. As for Burrow, he's expected to now have to sit on the sidelines for months. No recovery timeline even for how soon he could be back to play for the Cincinnati Bengals. And we're going to wrap up tonight with a bit of a health minute, a consumer check on you. Social media trends, might talk about fad diets, talking about what is the right amount to eat when it comes to protein. How high could you go? While protein is incredibly important for human health in general, consuming too much at the expense of other types of nutrients comes with some risks, doctors say. In today's Health Minute, Mandy Gaither has more on how much protein the average person actually needs and why experts say the healthy diet truly is all about balance.
It's part of a healthy diet. Protein from sources like lean meats, chicken, eggs, and legumes can help you build and maintain muscle, but it should be just one part of your plate.
If protein has the best PR team in nutrition right now, fiber is really the unsung hero.
Michelle Cardell with Weight Watchers International says fiber gets lost in the protein hype, but it deserves just as much, if not more, attention. She says trends like the carnivore diet, made up of only animal products, are concerning.
It's extremely restrictive, cutting out nearly all plant foods, which are going to be rich sources of fiber and vitamins, minerals, and then phytochemicals that are linked to long-term health.
Cardell says actual protein needs vary based on age, body composition, activity level, and health goals. But she says a good rule of thumb for more sedentary adults is about 1 gram of protein per kilogram of weight. So for a person who weighs 150 pounds, that translates to about 68 grams of protein each day.
More active individuals or older adults, those who are seeking weight loss, and those looking to build or preserve muscle may benefit though from higher intakes.
Cardell says to aim for 20 to 30 grams of protein per meal, but also make sure to keep a balance with your eating patterns.
As a dietitian, it would make my heart very happy if everyone's plate included a lean source of protein, a great source of fiber, and some healthy fats to help with that heart health and brain health.
For Health Minute, I'm Mandy Gaither.
Now, one more thing from the dietitian expert who you just heard from there, for people who are trying to lose weight, especially anyone using GLP-1 drugs, they may actually want to increase their protein intake to about 1.2 to 1.6 grams per kilos of weight. So do the math there. But this would be to help with muscle repair, feeling fuller longer, and to reduce the muscle loss that might come as a result of taking said medication. All right, looking at the clock, it is almost 8:50. And with that, we're about to wrap up tonight. Bring you back to the homepage. A reminder, of course, you see now, as I was encouraging you folks to click on this troubleshooters investigation from Mark Stevens, definitely worth your time. So many of today's top stories, updates, investigations, local, national headlines, all there for you to peruse here on the homepage. Often something you can also access on the Wave News app itself, free to download. The Wave Weather Now app, also free to download. Always great tools to have there. A reminder for here, us in the Wave Now studio, we're ready for you to unpack today's big stories Monday through Friday, starting at 8:05. I'm going to leave you with this hazier look again at the downtown night skyline with, you see the tallest of the towers there, shining just a little brighter. All right, looking at the clock, looking at the temperature out there. My name is Jose Sosaya. Appreciate you joining us for tonight's Wave Extra. We will see you tomorrow night.